From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Now, all the writers here at the festival these past 2 days have been distinguished. But I've been lucky enough to draw the two who actually need no introduction whatsoever. Those of you who were here yesterday know I had a conversation with Toni Morrison. And today I get to finish the festival by introducing Garrison Keillor. I'm sure that everyone here knows that he is the longtime mastermind and performer of Prairie Home Companion, now approaching 40 years on the radio. As well as the man behind the Writer's Almanac and 3 anthologies of poems. Wonderful poems, by the way. And this afternoon, he's going to talk about his most recent collection, Good Poems, American Places. And so without further ado, let me introduce Garrison Keillor.
Thank you very much. Thank you so very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Back in the day, my little daughter, we didn't pay for a bottle of water. Back when Elvis was alive and coffee didn't cost $3.95. Back then there was no internet. Google hadn't been invented yet. There were no chat rooms for us to go to. We just sat around and talked to people we knew. There were no seat belts, no airbags. You stood on the front seat next to your dad as he drove along drinking his beer. Or you sat on his lap and you helped him steer. Every Sunday, we went for a drive to see the leaves when fall arrived. There was no iPod to stick in your ear. Your parents were all there was to hear. I was autistic back in the day, but I didn't know it, so I was okay. I had no shrink with a big black beard. People just looked at me and said, well, he's weird. And left me alone. And for therapy, I spent all day in the library looking up things. Had no iPad, but I was a kid, and it wasn't that bad. Back in the day, my little child, there were no play dates. We just ran wild. We played in the streets, we played in the ruins. Half the time they had no idea what we were doing. We ran like coyotes in big herds and learned to smoke and say bad words and jump out of trees if they dared you to. My mother would have been terrified, but she never knew. I'm fascinated watching you. Show me drinking beer again. I need to see that. Yeah. I represent the low end of poetry. So that's why they brought me on last. I started out an idealist. My people were separatists. They belonged to a separatist sect called the Sanctified Brethren. And we held ourselves away from the rest of the world to keep ourselves pure and to keep our carnal impulses under control. But I got over it early. Staying separate from the rest of the world only whetted my, that's wetted with an H, not whetted my appetite for all that the world had to offer. Because I learned Elizabethan poets in junior high school who were not separate from the world. William Shakespeare had an unhappy marriage in Stratford, and so it prompted him to go into London and become an actor and to give us those sonnets, none of which were about Anne Hathaway. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments, he wrote, but there were nothing but impediments in his marriage to Anne. There's an irony for you. Unhappiness leading to art, but it happens all the time. I learned those beautiful poets who had a very low life expectancy. Robert Herrick, Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe. And all of their poems said the same thing, that summer is brief, life is brief. It is so beautiful. As Emily Dickinson said, life is so all-encompassing, there's little time left for anything else. And that from someone who spent most of her mature years in her father's house and a great deal of it in her upstairs bedroom. Success is counted sweetest by those who ne'er succeed. To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. Not one of all the purple host who took the flag today can give the definition so clear of victory as he defeated, dying, on whose forbidden ear the distant sounds of triumph burst agonized and clear. So I loved the poets who wrote about love, since love was what I did not have. I was 13 years old. I was almost 6 feet tall. I weighed 136 pounds. I had odd half-rim, horn-rim glasses. I had a home haircut with the telltale sign, the big arc shaved up over your ears, high water pants, wrists sticking out of your cuffs, hand-me-down clothes, most of them from my older brother, some from my older sister. Jeans that zipped up the side. So no wonder you would learn poems like "Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that this brief summer yields, and we will sit upon the rocks by shallow waterfalls and listen to melodious flocks of birds sing madrigals. O daffodils, we weep to see you haste away so soon, as yet the early morning sun had not attained its noon. So gather rosebuds while ye may, for time is still a-flying, and this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. I had no conception of mortality when I was 13, of course, but you put these things into your head, and then you remember them when you are of an age that you can understand them. There was a time when grove and stream and every common sight had all the freshness of a dream and radiance so bright. Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, the loveliness of summer flower, its glory soon is past. Because they had covered the high ground, I then felt no obligation to try to do it myself. So I wrote poems like, "Oh, what a luxury it be, what pleasure, oh, what perfect bliss, how ordinary and yet chic, to pee, to piss, to take a leak." To feel your bladder just go free and open like the mighty Miss, and all your cares go down the creek, to pee, to piss, to take a leak. For gentlemen of great physique who can hold water for 1 week. For ladies who 1/4 cup of tea can fill completely up. For folks in urinalysis. For little kids just learning this. For everyone, it's pretty great to urinate. Women are more circumspect, but men can piss with great effect. With terrible hydraulic force, can make a stream or change its course. Can put out fires or cigarettes, and sometimes laying down our bets. Late at night outside the bars, we like to aim up at the stars. Oh yes, for men, it's much more grand. Women sit or squat, we stand and hold the fellow in our hand. And proudly watch the mighty arc, adjust the range and make our mark on stones and posts for rival men to smell and not come back again. That was beautiful. You did a beautiful job. Human sperm is very small. 5 microns, that's about all. It's just a cell with a dangly tail. Not as big as the ovum, but still you have to love them. And they're produced in the testes of the male. Beneath their shiny domes, they contain your chromosomes, and the tail can kick just like a leg. Nothing could be finer than to swim up a vagina in search of a rendezvous with an egg. The sperm have one ambition, and that's to gain admission to the female reproductive canal. And once they get in it, they go a millimeter a minute, along with 40 million of their pals. The sperm is no boob. When it smells the fallopian tube, it goes into some crazy figure eights, about 10,000 times, as those female enzymes keep egging him on to penetrate. The sperm all advance, and they do their little dance, but only one gets through the egg membrane. And the union of those two, that's what led to you. So be thankful that your dad did not abstain. That old man in the garage once let loose a great barrage. And though he is now ancient and infirm, and his breath is bad, children, he's your dad. because he contributed his sperm. You can get them from a bank or from Jim or John or Frank. But when it comes to fatherhood, there's just one man to thank. He was young and he was dumb, but when things began to hum, he did not withdraw. He became your paw. And that is where we all come from. The only good reason to write a poem is to impress a woman. I think Shakespeare may have felt the same way. And when he wrote, "When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state," I think he had one person in mind, his great poem about the redemptive power of love. When Yeats wrote, "Wine, it comes in at the mouth, and love comes at the eye. That is all we know of truth, for we grow old and die. I lift the glass up to my mouth and look at you and sigh." He had someone in mind, and I'm sure that he gave the poem to her as soon as he possibly could, handwritten on vellum paper, and watched for her reaction. To have one passionate reader would be preferable to having 1,000 indifferent readers. And you never know who might read a poem and take it personally. You could only hope for that. You made crusty bread rolls filled with chunks of brie and minced garlic drizzled with olive oil. We ate them lovingly, our legs coiled together under a table. And salmon and dill and lemon and whole wheat couscous, baked with fresh ginger and garlic, and a hill of green beans and carrots, roasted with honey and tofu. It was beautiful, the candles, the linen, the silver, the sun shining down on our northern street. Me with my hand on your leg, you, my lover, in your jeans and green t-shirt and beautiful bare feet. How simple life is. We buy a fish, we are fed, we sit close to each other, we talk, and then we go to bed. It's a sonnet that I wrote years ago for someone who made me exactly that meal. Margaret was the smartest girl in the 11th grade. Tall with dark hair, tied up in a tight French braid. She was the only girl I knew who read Albert Camus. And for that very reason I did too. I stood behind her in choir, a lonely baritone. But when I smelled her exotic French cologne, and felt the existential heat of her body, I became Luciano Pavarotti. In choir when I was 17, I met the beautiful Christine, the woman I adored. And as the choir sang praises to the Lord, I sang to the back of Christine's head many, many things that could never be said. Oh, oh. I tried to invent a new form, the singable sonnet. The beauty of the sonnet being, first of all, that it is only 14 lines, and so it imposes a limit on you. And you discover that so often 14 lines really is enough. And it carries with it a rhyme and a scheme of rhyme and meter that make it memorable, which is the hope of any writer, that your work might catch on somebody's memory like a sand burr and stick to them. The way those poems did that I read when I was 13, loveliest of trees, the cherry now is hung with bloom. Along the bough it stands along the woodland ride, wearing white for Eastertide, a sonnet that bounces along in a beautiful tempo, and you remember it for decades. I had a stroke, and one of the first things I did when I finally collected my faculties was to find out how many of my faculties I still had. And did I still remember When in Disgrace with Fortune in Men's Eyes? And did I still remember out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl? And I did, for the most part, remember them, and remembered my own sonnets as well. In the morning when she awoke, my dear lover, in bed on her back, buck naked, I crept under the cotton sky and over a hill with tufts of seagrass, and snaked my way into a ravine, and there found a delicate sea creature, trembling with sensation, a pink anemone, and touched it, and whoa, the sound of a soprano singing French, Italian, and Croatian simultaneously, and touched it with my tongue, and tasted caviar and Cabernet, and from above was sweetly sung a Puccini aria by Billie Holiday, so prettily, and then a shudder and a sigh, and we lay quietly, the opera star and I. Oh, 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 oh. Let me sing you one more. Back in the day, my little daughter, we didn't pay for a bottle of water. This is a prayer, and we can wind up with this, and then if you have any questions. This is an unusual prayer in that it's a prayer for the existence of God, not for anything more specific than that. I don't think you'll find anything of the sort in the Book of Common Prayer, or hear anything of the sort in the Evangelical Lutheran Church, but you should. Here I am, O Lord, and here is my prayer. Please be there. Don't want to ask too much, miracles and such. Just whisper in the air, please be there. When I die like other folks, don't want to find out you're a hoax. So I'm not on my knees asking for world peace, or that the polar ice cap freeze and save the polar bear, or even that the poor be fed, or angels hover o'er my bed. but I would sure be pissed if I should have been an atheist. Oh Lord, please exist. Oh, oh, oh. I have one more poem which I will not do. Out of deference to the signers, I will not do my poem, which consists of the names of the 87 counties of Minnesota. Aiken, Anoka, Becker, Beltrami, Benton, Big Stone, Blue Earth, Brown, Carlton, Carver, Cass, Chippewa, Chisago, Clay, Clearwater, Cook, Cottonwood, Crow Wing, Dakota, Dodge, Douglas, Faribault, Fillmore, Goodhue, Grand, Hennepin, Houston, Hubbard, Isanti, Itasca, Jackson, Knabec, Candy, Ojai, Kitson, Couchiching, Lackabarrel, Lake of the Woods, Le Sueur, Lyon, Macau, I won't do the rest of it. I'll just leave it right. Leave that there. Thank you so much. Thank you to the signers. So then, I just wanted to make it interesting for the signers, that's all. And glad that you were here as well. I think there are microphones in here if you have a question or anything that you'd like to ask that I would know anything about. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
For those of us who have not yet had the pleasure of seeing Prairie Home Companion live,
Yes.
can you tell us any details on any retirement plans?
My retirement plans.
If any.
Retirement is a treacherous step for anybody. I did it once already when I was 46, I think, and it was a huge mistake. It's a treacherous step. You think that you're going to be free and live a different kind of a life, but by this age, you only know how to live one kind of life. And all sorts of things follow. It's a slippery slope, is what I'm saying, retirement. And you take that step, and then suddenly people are calling you sir. And people are reaching for your elbow as you go downstairs. And you go to get into your car to drive, after dark, and people are suggesting maybe they ought to drive. And then that leads to other things, and before you know it, they shovel you into the Good Shepherd home, and you're forced to hang out with people you've been avoiding all of your life. And so it's very hard on people. No, my hope is just to get other people to do the work, and to become a sort of a gray eminence, which I almost am now. So, yes, somebody standing directly behind you. Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering if they have anything like this in Lake Wobegon. Poetry recitations, book festivals, that sort of thing.
When people gather under a tent in Lake Wobegon, and there is a speaker, he's not talking like I'm talking here today. He's talking about hellfire and damnation, and he carries that message right straight to everybody under the tent. And he walks around, a big, tall, skinny man with black hair falling into his eyes, and he keeps brushing it back. We have no idea who he is, but he comes to town regularly, and he carries an enormous black leather King James Bible like a hand grenade in his left hand. And he never actually opens it because he knows it by heart, everything that he wants to know. And for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That's what he would be preaching. Be sure your sin will find you out. And he bears down hard on young people just like yourself. You come down front weeping. Very different from today. Very different. Was there another? Yes.
Every other time over.
I'm sorry. Oh, there's another microphone over there? Oh, lovely. Thank you.
I'm the writing at Prairie Home Companion is compared to the writing that you do for Prairie Home Companion and how they affect each other?
Well, I write Prairie Home Companion, so I wrote yesterday's show. It differs from other writing in that with other writing, if I'm working on a book or I just wrote a review for the Times Book Review, I consider it a point of honor to be at least 2 weeks past deadline and 6 months if possible. It's a game that's played between writers and editors. Writing for a Prairie Home Companion, you do not have that luxury. And so you write, I wrote the show on Friday morning. There was a rehearsal at the theater on Friday late afternoon, and I realized that most of what I had written on Friday morning was really not worth it, and so I went home and I rewrote it. But you see, the point is that nothing is ever finished. There's no such thing as finishing a piece of writing. It simply is taken away from you, that's all. And with Prairie Home Companion, it's taken away at 5 o'clock Central Time on Saturday. And there is no going beyond that. I have sometimes stood on stage with Sharpie, and I have marked up actors' scripts as they were reading. But it's not that easy. Not that easy to do. With books, it's a whole other thing. I'm writing a Guy Noir mystery right now, and it's way past deadline. You get pleading letters from your editor, and she's just weeping, begging you, and it just gives me a strange kind of pleasure, that's all. Yes, sir.
So I have a religious question.
Yes, sir.
Have you become a born-again Unitarian?
A born-again Unitarian, wow. That would be an amazing thing, wouldn't it? How would that happen? You would just go to a coffee shop on Sunday morning and it would just suddenly come over you?
Well, there's a gospel hymn, the old rugged question mark.
No, I did it once as a sanctified brethren child, and we believed that it took, but we're not sure, of course. Yes.
I'm a big fan of Guy Noir, and I'm just curious, what was the inspiration for that character?
What was the origination?
Inspiration.
Integration. The inspiration.
Yes.
Inspiration, integration. Integration would be an interesting question. How is that character integrated into public radio? That character is sort of contrary to public radio, and that was really the inspiration of it. You know, was being aware of the constrictions of good taste, and you know, to find a way around it somehow. So Guy Noir is the only person in public radio who can really admire women in a frank way, right? I think so. I mean, you know, she walked in and she was tall and she had blonde hair that fell down on her shoulders like a waterfall that any man would have been proud to go over. She was skinny. Her jeans were so tight I could read the embroidery on her underwear. It said Tuesday. They can't say that on All Things Considered. They wouldn't last long. There's the whole rationale for fiction right there. Just being able to let loose a little bit. Was there somebody over this side?
Yes. yes.
Oh,
And-
there you are.
Yes, I am. And I don't have a question. I just want to tell you thank you. I discovered you 7.5 years ago while I was sitting in my apartment after experiencing an electrical outage. I was on St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. The
Oh,
power
yeah.
had gone out,
Uh-huh.
and I had just recently moved there, and I didn't know what to do. And I had a little portable radio that I'd gotten from when I was a Girl Scout troop leader.
Wow.
And so I turned it on, and
Uh-huh.
I fished through, and I finally found something, and it sounded interesting, and I couldn't figure out if this was real
Yes.
or...
Yeah.
So it ended up being rebroadcast the following day, and we still didn't really have power.
Yeah.
And I found you again,
Wow.
and I kept finding you every Saturday and Sunday.
We were meant to meet.
Yes, we were. Yes. So this is my first book festival, and I only came because I opened up the city paper, and I saw your name listed, and I made it here today.
Well, here you are.
Yes.
Thank you.
So please continue to do what you do.
Well, we'll do my best. Yes, sir. Man in the red shirt here.
Yes, I'm one of the tall ones too. I was wondering, this is kind of a DC question.
Right.
DC decided, or has decided, for a while to close its libraries on Sundays.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering what you thought of that. Closing libraries on Sundays. It's very specific.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, I would keep any public facility open that's in use, and so I have to assume that they were being used. But the libraries have undergone, you know, a very sharp change, you know, with the internet and the introduction of Google. I mean, for anybody who writes a radio show on Friday morning, Google is a godsend, you know. And so I don't go down to the library and pore through volumes, you know, to find out what I need to know about the migratory habits of the common loon. I want it for a little sketch and zap. It's
Maybe I'm
there.
officially old now that I want to go to libraries on
Yeah,
Sundays.
but so libraries just have to reinvent themselves as the rest of us do. I think they have a future as some kind of sanctuary, and because people who love the internet gradually become aware of a kind of an OCD reliance on the internet, and they need somebody to cut them off. And I think the libraries have a future as a place where you will go and tall women with their hair tied back in buns, wearing sensible shoes, and a pencil stuck in their hair will make you get offline.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm hoping that you can give me some advice.
Of course, I'm here to give advice.
I too am a parent of a teenage daughter.
Oh.
And after a very hard day in which she promised to dance on my grave, and not only that, but she was going to enjoy it,
Uh-huh.
what can you offer to me to read so that I can remember why I enjoy being a parent?
A teenage daughter is sent to you by God as a sort of divine justice
My mother's in the
to avenge your blessed mother. And also because they're just so dramatic and they're so interesting, and their English is fractured, and they're addicted to texting, and they do it so well, and there's all this data going on in their heads, and that's the future. So we have to be in favor of the future, right? We have to just stand back and watch. How old is she?
13.
13, the same age as mine. So there you are.
Yes, I
Yes,
was
yes.
pregnant at the same time, and thought was so unusual. And then I found out you picked out that for your daughter's middle name.
Yes. Well, if it's any comfort,
As the Lord's blessing.
daughters are much harder on their mothers. And
That must
so
be
look at it from my point of view. Michigan, Michigan. Bum 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 bum. The leader of the pack.
You, sir, have a distinctive countenance.
I did what?
You have a distinctive countenance, and I have two questions in that
Yes, sir.
regard.
Yeah.
The first is, have you ever written a poem about your distinctive countenance? And the second would be, how did that work for you when you were 13 with that clothing ensemble that you were describing earlier?
The closing ensemble.
Clothing.
Clothing ensemble. I'm in radio, and you don't worry about your countenance whatsoever, and it's dark, it's dim, it's not a bright light on you. You don't think about it, and you never listen to yourself. I don't listen to the show, and I do the show. I enjoy doing the show, but I wouldn't enjoy listening to it. And in the same way, I don't look at photographs of myself. I don't sit and study them. It's none of my business. It's other people's problem. It's not mine. You can only take on so much trouble, and don't take on any more than you're entitled to take on. I have a 13-year-old daughter. Yes.
Yeah. Some of your writing has sort of a regional flavor, I guess you could say. And I was wondering, what kind of writer do you think you'd be if you had been born someplace less interesting, like, say, the East Coast?
I don't know, where on the East Coast? Delaware?
Delaware, they say.
Well, the beauty of the Midwest, you see, is that most people in America have never been there. And this immediately gives you a great deal of latitude. And when you tell people on the East Coast, including Delaware, that you're from Minnesota, there's a long pause. And they say, "It gets cold there, doesn't it?" So, we are a state of mystery, but we're also an iconic state. Cold, winter. So here we are. We're in late September, and if you are telling stories for a living, you can start getting into winter in about another 2-3 weeks. We won't actually get winter in Minnesota until November, maybe even early December. But nobody's going to come checking on you. So you can put them all in a little white house that's leaning off to the southeast because the wind is out of the northwest, and white out blizzards, and poor children going to catch the bus, unable to see their hands in front of their faces, and digging caves into the snow, and surviving there for weeks on end, and becoming feral, and being raised by coyotes. I mean, you can tell this sort of a story, and it will be half believed in the East Coast, including in Delaware. I have gone out east and have told a story about being in a whiteout blizzard and being picked up to go to school in a sleigh pulled by 2 black horses, and a man with a handlebar mustache and reins wound around his forearms, and the sleigh, lying in the sleigh with other whimpering children, going through the storm and under a buffalo robe. And I just like to watch the faces of the audience as I tell this story. And they're mostly with me. And then I have the sleigh go down onto the ice of the Mississippi River and swerve from side to side to avoid tattered men in gray who are hiding behind rocks and trees, the last remnants of the Army of Northern Virginia. And still, some people are with me. Teenagers, but you know. You take what you can get. No, it just offers such enormous advantages to be from Minnesota that I think anybody from the East Coast who is a serious writer should be head out west. Minnesota, South Dakota, Wyoming, take your pick. Ohio State, just one school after another that's humiliated our teams.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just came up for equal time.
Yes.
Michigan, and then the Superior State.
Good, good, okay. Ohio State.
We love you.
Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why did I ever leave Ohio? All right, thanks again to our son. One more, yes.
Yes, I was wondering, from one Norwegian Minnesotan to the other,
Yeah.
What do you prefer better, hot dish or lutefisk? And for those of you who don't know what that is, could you please describe what lutefisk is exactly?
Lutefisk is a holiday delicacy which is made of cod, which has been dried so that it resembles elm bark, and it's been dried with the use of lye, and so when it is reconstituted and water is added to it, it has a particularly pungent lye aroma about it. It has to be rinsed many, many, many times. And even then, to some people with a great deal of imagination, it still smells of lye, so that it's like eating soap. But there is good lutefisk, and then there's the other lutefisk, and so you want to choose your cook carefully, and that's true of anything in life. But you want to go to a small town, and if you find a woman in her mid to late 70s, maybe early 80s, a woman with an old apron and kind of loose upper arms. That's your lutefisk cook. All right? One more? Yes?
Yes, sir. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I always appreciate when you're down there at the Ryman or whatever. What are your impressions of the Nashville scene and how that works with your overall show and so forth?
I know nothing about Nashville. You would know more than I, but I was there at a sort of a crucial point in my life when I was looking for something to do, and I went down on assignment from the New Yorker magazine, and I wrote an article about the Grand Ole Opry and their last show at the old Ryman Auditorium, the old Gospel Tabernacle down near Broadway, and Tootsie's Orchid Lounge and Ernest Tubbs Record Shop. I was in 1974 in March. Richard Nixon was in serious trouble here in Washington, and he went down to be there for the first performance out in their big suburban hall, and I wrote about their last show at the Ryman Auditorium, and out of that show, I looked at it and thought this would be interesting to do, and being an English major, I had a lifelong ambition to sing on stage in front of people, and so I went up to Minnesota and I started a show. It was a great time backstage at the old Ryman Auditorium. Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton was singing for Beechnut Chewing Tobacco, and Stonewall Jackson, the shortest man in country music, and Loretta Lynn got off a big bus in a kind of a enormous white antebellum dress, and her hair piled up high, big hair, beautiful singers, and such sweet people. We've been trying to emulate them ever since. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.